Have you ever noticed that raisins are more expensive than grapes? Why would that be? Aren't raisins just old grapes? But they're worth more. They've sweetened with time. More care has gone into their cultivation. More hands, more decisions were made along the road for a raisin than in a grape. They have more in them. And some cultures see people the same way. When a person starts to look more like a raisin than a grape, when our faces start to tell others that we've got some miles on us, it means we've got more in us. We've been sweetened perhaps by life. There's been a lot of decisions made and handling that's gone on along the way. It would cause you to think, wow, this person whose face tells me they've been through quite a bit has a lot to offer. And a lot of cultures really honor that. But ours really isn't one of them. When we start looking more like raisins than grapes, we sometimes turn to Botox, because that can make you look like a grape again. But the issue here is that we should be thinking about more than just how the outside looks. We should be thinking about what the inside contains. It would make sense that someone who's lived a longer life, who has more of that raisin quality to themselves, would have more perspective and more to offer than someone who hasn't. Japan is one of the cultures that really honors their elders. And you might remember in 2011, there was a terrible tragedy there. Do you remember in March of 2011, they had an earthquake, and that unleashed this wild tsunami? The ocean just came and flooded them out. It was such a big earthquake and tsunami that even Alaska felt it on the other side of the Pacific. But it just completely devastated everyone who was living along the coast in this certain area. When they were doing the cleanup, they found lots of these stone markers that had been placed along the villages of the coastline. And they marked the spot where earlier tsunamis had come, the high water mark for earlier disasters. And one of them said, no matter how many years pass, do not forget this warning. But they didn't. Even in that culture where they really honor aging and wisdom, they didn't. Because it was too tempting to build by the water. So they did, and it all got washed away. Living and surviving through things does give us some opportunities to see wisely, to have the hindsight to look backwards. But getting old isn't enough. And that's because hindsight is not enough. We can't just have hindsight about the good old days. We've got to have some other things too. And the image that the gospel gives us is holding a lamp. An older person has been holding their lamp longer than a younger person, which is an advantage for experience. But if there's no oil in the lamp, it doesn't matter how long you've been holding it. It's got to have oil in it. And that is a lesson for all of us to take. Because true wisdom, which is the oil of the lamp, is a beautiful blend of three things. A lot of us would like to get by with just hindsight, just experience. Well, when I was a kid, or this is how I see it, or I'll tell you the way I was raised. And that's an important blend. It's part of what makes the oil of wisdom the oil, but it's not the whole thing. So, what is true wisdom? What is that blend? The author Ruby Sales says it is hindsight plus foresight plus insight. Being able to look behind with wisdom and honesty, looking back and saying, wow, what from that was good and what from that wasn't good. That's hindsight. Foresight. Wow, based on where we are right now, looking at the signs of the times, where are we going? Where shall we go next? Where is God calling us? That's foresight. And then insight, which says, am I a tool in God's toolbox? Or am I more like a door that's been closed to the plan God wants? Looking within and having a good, honest gaze at where we stand. We need to have all three of those things to be wise. And that's why every community has a few wise people and then a lot of people who are on the road to wisdom but aren't quite there yet. And we usually know when we're with a wise person that we are. We feel it. Because there's no such thing as counterfeit wisdom. You can spot it. So this is why this gospel is so important for us and why it works so beautifully with that first reading. Because the first reading says, if you want to know what wisdom is like a traveling professor who knocks on everybody's door saying, who wants to take my class? Who wants to take my class? Wisdom class, free, a lot of homework, but it's a free class. And a lot of us, we would rather not. And a lot of us mistakenly think, if I just get old, I'll be wise. I don't have to do any work. But we know that's not true. That's clearly not true. So when the traveling professor called wisdom knocks on my door or on your door, are we going to take her class? So a lot of us might think when we hear this gospel about those who had oil in their lamps and those who ran out of oil in their lamps, that it's about God closing the door in our face if we don't do everything right. But it's not about that at all. That doorway opens to a future that we don't know. So we have to have oil in our lamp to light the next step, to light one more step. We won't be prepared to go beyond the door unless we have oil in the lamp. And although aging will help us grow in experience, we don't have to wait to ask for wisdom. We can ask for it now. So let's take a moment and just do that for ourselves. Let's start by figuring out maybe, what is our strength right now? Are you better at one of those three parts of that blend of oil than the other? Are you stronger at hindsight? Are you good at looking at the past and retrieving what's valuable and recognizing, oh, that wasn't very good, but this is good. Let's keep this, let's not keep that. Are you better at foresight, looking at the signs of the times and having a vision for where God wants us to go next, how to do the next right thing? Is your strength insight? Are you pretty good at naming your strengths and also naming your character defects? Do you see why, if you have all three of those things, that's wisdom? That's wisdom. If I can be honest with myself about the past, if I can be open to the future, and if I can be real clear about what I bring to the table, that's a wise person. Where do you struggle? Is there one of those that you struggle with? I'll give you an example of a few struggles. Some grandparents carry themselves as wisdom figures, but all they talk about is the past, and their grandkids don't see them as wise. If all you do is talk about the past and it doesn't touch the kids today, they'll think you're sweet, they'll like your cookies, but they won't see you as wise. In your workplace, if you're one of those people who always thinks that your idea is the best, and when other people want to share their ideas or grow on that's a good idea, but instead of this one aspect, you said, let's try this. If you get angry in response to that, your colleagues won't see you as wise. Even if you're the smartest one there, it won't come off that way. Your boss won't want to promote you, because true wisdom has foresight too. How are you at acknowledging where you stand in life? If you're one of those people who has all the strategy and all the smarts and all of the charisma, but if you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, falling in the same hole, not learning to sidestep the issues that you've had a chance to experience but you don't want to see it, then people won't see you as wise. So we need to figure out where it is that we need to grow in that blend. How do we add more oil to our lamp? With more hindsight? With more foresight? Or with more insight? Wisdom, the great professor, is always wandering around looking for someone to take her class. And when you take it, you grow in these three areas. A lot of us maybe don't think about that as much because we're too worried about looking more like a grape than a raisin. And there are shortcuts to looking more like a grape. There's creams and there's Botox. There's a lot of shortcuts to that. But there are no shortcuts to wisdom.